All right, good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's Planning Commission. We will get started here in just a moment. If this is your first time with us, just a brief overview of how each case will be handled. We will have staff present the case to us. We'll have an opportunity to ask them questions if we have any. The applicant will then be invited forward and they can share any brief additional details that they'd like to bring to our attention. We'll ask them questions, then open up the public hearing for each case so the public will have an opportunity to speak to the proposals. After that, we'll invite the applicant back up. They can answer any questions or address anything raised during the public hearing, and then we will deliberate, make a decision, and move on to our next case. Before we get started on 15 Lexington Ave, Commissioners, any potential conflicts of interest today? All right, hearing none, we will get started with 15 Lexington Avenue with Elizabeth.
It's a good omen. I started right off the bat, remembered to take off the mask and to take it off mute, so. Okay, the first item on the agenda is a request to construct a surface parking lot in a residential zone district. This is just north of Fulton on the west side. I should mention this is before you today because surface parking lots in residential zone districts require special land use approval. The subject property is the first lot in the residential zone district in the TN-LDR, just north of the traditional business area zone district. It's improved with a multiple family home. I think it has 5 units in it. And the lot is about just shy of 8,000 square feet. The structure on the property was constructed in about 1905. There is a shared gravel driveway on the south side of the site, and there's a small garage. The property is also in the U to the Zoo area specific plan. That is from, what year was that? 2012. So that's been a while now. The subject site is in this area on the lower right. There's this large, this gateway circle, and the subject property is sort of just on the edge of that circle. The way that I read the associated text, the plan recommends or acknowledges development pressures in this area and recommends that 4-story buildings could be allowed east of Lexington, between Lexington and Winter. I took that to mean the east side of Lexington. I did get correspondence from meaning I took that to say on the east side of the Lexington could stand that additional development at greater heights, and on the west side of Lexington where this property is, they didn't want to see encroachment into the residential area. I did get a letter from the John Ball area neighbors, and those folks were part of the steering committee for the U to the Zoo plan, and it was their contention that that this recommendation to allow the greater height along Fulton would also include this property. So they did submit a letter of support for this request, along with the West Fulton Business Association. This is a survey of the subject property along with adjacent properties that are proposed to be developed. The subject property is this one at the north, and then the remainder of the properties on this slide are located in the TN-TBA zone district. And the area in the TN-TBA is proposed for redevelopment of a 4-story mixed-use building. And this is the proposed site plan. The building is approximately, a little bit over 16,000 square feet and would include ground floor cannabis uses and at least 2 floors of office devoted to the applicant's, for the applicant's use. Those of you on the Planning Commission that considered all the cannabis applications might recall this one. There was a building proposed at the corner, and it was approved for both medical and recreational. But at that time, a 9,500 square foot building of 3 stories was proposed. The applicant is now proposing an additional story and is desiring additional parking to support that use. And so that is what is under consideration today, the additional parking to support a proposed 4-story building. A total of 42 parking spaces are proposed to support the new development. I'm going to back up for just a moment and say that the building, it can be constructed by right. So the Planning Commission won't need to review this building. It's really the associated uses that might need special land use. And in the past, you did approve that ground floor cannabis use, and depending on what is eventually proposed relative to what was approved, we'll have to make a determination whether any further Planning Commission consideration is required. That being said, we aren't looking at the building today. You're just looking at the proposed additional parking on this residential lot that is intended to support this building. It's a little bit difficult to see here, but I think one of these light lines represents the lot line. And so on the residential property, there are 14 parking spaces, 14 full parking spaces, and then 9 partial parking spaces on that property. So we've got them at the north, on the west, and then partial parking spaces that would be connected with the property to the south. A total of 42 parking spaces is proposed to support the new development, and including the parking spaces on the subject property. The applicant has incorporated parking lot landscape buffering and screening. At the front lot line, at the closest, the parking lot is proposed to be 5 feet from the lot line and 9 feet at the furthest. So you can see at the south, it's 5, and it's about 9 at the north end, and that would be required to be landscaped. We use one of our landscape screening options. And then along the north and the west, because the parking lot is adjacent to a residential use, a landscape buffer is required, and a landscape buffer of 10 feet is required in the side yard, which would be to the north, and 8 feet to the rear. The buffer can be reduced with the provision of a 6-foot privacy fence. To the north, which is the side yard, that does meet the buffer width. To the west, that is a little bit short, but with the provision of a fence, the proposed 5 feet is adequate. In this case, however, there is a fence at the back of the property. To the best of my ability, I tried to determine whether it was associated with the subject property or the neighboring property, and it did seem to me like it was associated with the neighboring property. I don't think I have a photo with the neighboring property because the finished side of the fence was facing the subject property. So that can be, further addressed at LUD's permitting if you find this use to be appropriate. But in essence, we'd be asking the Planning Commission to consider whether an additional fence should be installed in addition to landscaping if the fence is found to be on the adjacent property. As far as green space and tree canopy, the site does seem to exceed the green space requirement, and tree canopy will be calculated at LUD's permitting. As I mentioned, the applicant did reach out to the West Fulton Business Association and the John Ball area neighbors, and both of those groups did express support for the proposed parking lot. I haven't received any other correspondence from any neighbors. So in sum, we're looking at the construction of a new parking lot in lieu of an existing 5-unit structure, which you can see in this photo, and improvement with a surface parking lot. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have or turn it over to the applicant.
Any questions?
I just have one. Do we know if the 5-unit structure is occupied?
I believe it's currently vacant. I don't know. I did look up rental certification and registration, and it was up until recently, registered and certified. So perhaps when the applicant purchased it, they didn't renew leases.
Okay, thanks.
So.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. I'll invite the applicant up then if there's other details you want to share with us.
Good afternoon. I'll apologize in advance for some passion that I typically carry with myself on this project. So Brent Gibson, President, Founder of Construction Simplified. Our offices are just west of Fulton. I was in front of Planning Commission 6 years ago actually it was BZA, to get approval on our office then, 2,500 square foot garage that we converted into our office. Times have been good, we're good at what we do, and actually 3 years ago, we started pursuing the original purchasers of these 4 parcels in question, or in the lot, which was Oak Flint, Cloud Cannabis, knowing what their intentions were, knowing that we believe in the west side, we believe in Fulton, and we wanted to, if cannabis was going to be there, appropriately bring what the U to the Zoo plan and what we saw the benefit of West Fulton could be, which was somewhere between, I think, initial rendering had a 2-story, they submitted a 3-story at recreational, all intention of getting recreational approved and going to the 4-story. So we have an executed development agreement. We have substantial amounts of money into this project to date, predicated essentially on this meeting, if you will. We are planning on moving our office to the top 2 floors of this project. And with that, the sites are really odd because the 11 Lexington site is very narrow. There was just no way to fit parking. The max parking we could get up to the rain garden, if you will, was 16 spots. And that was very constrained for a building. Even at 3 stories, we couldn't get it to match. Obviously, we could ask for reductions. It begged in our minds to get equally the number of spots to push into that 15 Lexington. Coupled with this, and I know we need to consider it, the cannabis use and what parking requirements versus actual use, and how we're creating that separation between the two parking. So we're trying to make a good development where we have 3 floors of office to West Fulton, which begs to have more activity, making a separate private parking lot to the north where we can provide the cannabis clientele or the patrons their own space there that's not fighting and causing more traffic on Fulton, on Lexington, in the area. Other challenges, Lexington is one way only, or one way to the south. There is no parking along Lexington. There's a right turn lane. The north side of Fulton is continually packed full with Grand Valley students. Some of the photos, can I scroll through this, Elizabeth? Does this work or no? Some of the photos I attached around this immediate block. These are the neighboring houses. This is essentially the northernmost line of 15 Lexington. Just trying to show, yes, there is parking already behind here, right against the property line of the adjacent structure. This is actually the vacant parcel at Vito and Lexington. They're parking, obviously not in designated parking. This is typical. Why is it typical? It's typical because you have obviously Lexington School that was recently approved by this commission for an addition, parking along, this is the north end of Vito. This is looking east on Vito, south on Lexington. Again, there's parking only on the east side. This is on the west side of, this is on Gold, on the opposite side of the block. Again, there's evidence that typical cars, there's just not off-street parking for this immediate block. A lot of single-family homes that are rentals, and you've got many college kids parking wherever. You can see evidence of that. Same here, this is the next house south. So our request is not any more parking. It's simply what we believe, the 4-story that we'd like to, obviously it's by right. We have a very extreme passion to move our office here and continue building up West Fulton. I can tell you the demographics, you've all heard about the construction industry. It is, not the demographics, the financials are very, very, very tough. We're actually going to be on city commission for a small portion of some financial incentives because this, it just doesn't, it's brownfield, it's a dirty site. There's a lot of challenges here and we don't register for much. So I guess what we're saying here is we need this parking to make this a viable development. If not, I can tell you it will probably sit there indefinitely, and our hope is that we can contribute. I personally own 4 parcels directly west, so the Fulton Gold, with plans for the future of some multifamily. So this isn't just a one-off. Our plan is to fully develop the northern portion of this Fulton's block here, and hopefully if times go right, it'll be all done in the next 2 years. So thank you for your consideration. Let me know if you have any specific questions. I know there's a lot of history and a lot of detail here, but hopefully it made sense.
All right, thanks. Any questions for the applicant?
Is there a reason that the parking can't be accommodated within the commercial zone district instead of the residential?
Yeah, so the max count was 16 spots. Because that third lot is so narrow, it just doesn't allow for turning radiuses. It only allowed for one ingress and egress of that lot. We tried 4 different site plans, both with Moore and Brugink and Pure Architects, and we just couldn't get anything of.
Yeah, and I'm wondering about other parcels within the commercial district instead of other parcels within the residential.
Certainly that means accessibility to other parcels, which I don't have. My other parcels due west of this. By doing 3-story residential, we're going to have to ask for a reduction in parking to allow 2 3-story residential buildings, mixed use with retail on the first floor because of parking. It's the U to the Zoo plan, in my opinion, does not allow enough parking for the size buildings that are there. Our building's only 50 by 90 feet wide. It's 4,500 square feet. You can't make it much smaller, I guess, from a reasonable construction project or development. To do that, to reduce the square footage, to hit 3 stories, to have a parking count that's reduced to that number. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. And I guess what I'm poking at is why does the parking have to be adjacent to the use?
Driving down Fulton every day for the past 7 years to my office, there is no parking available. You have a very unique mix of houses and Business and the city parking lot down at Strait is packed full all the time. If you drive, the Fulton Street is packed every night, every morning because of Grand Valley students. There's just no parking, especially at this core right here.
Thank you.
I can also state that prior to Mr. Gibson, I've met a number of developers about this property. And I think, not unlike other areas of our TBA, the parcel sizes are pretty small. And so for us to get a reasonable square footage of commercial development, there's simply not enough land left to adequately park close to what the ordinance would otherwise require. So there have been challenges of trying to fit, where are our priorities, to make the commercial development viable and have some parking. We're a little constrained in this area specifically. I'll also note that I think that there's a small error in the calculation on the site plan. Retailers actually, for cannabis, do actually require three spaces for every 1,000. So the number of required parking spaces is actually 45, not 42. So they are actually a little bit under what the ordinance would otherwise allow or require, pardon me.
And if I can add one more thing. I want to just stress the John Ball area neighbors letter of support. I forwarded it to Elizabeth this morning. It sounds like it maybe made it into your packets. And I initially, a week ago, sent Elizabeth my 20 email chain back and forth since my first November meeting with J-Ban. Have been part of the community for 6 years, been meeting with them. It took 2 meetings and a lot of conversation. We had an hour debate or longer back in November, and I finally got the letter last night. So I think showing their letter of support, I don't know how many of those have come across this commission's, that's powerful. And whether it's weighs much at this day as it did maybe 10 years ago at the U to the Zoo plan, it wasn't easy. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing now. If you're here about this case at 15 Lexington, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. All right. I'll close the public hearing and turn to commissioners. Are there any other questions for the applicant? All right. Then discussion. I was going to comment that Mr. Carlberg's letter does mean something, considering how thoughtfully critical he can be at times. So I think the fact that the applicant was willing to meet with them on multiple occasions and come to a letter of support, I think means something.
I do have one question for the applicant. Given the difficulty of maintaining space for your, it may be difficult to maintain the space just for your customers and your staff, given the Grand Valley students. Are you needing equipment for entry or somehow restricting use of your parking?
Are we restricting use of the parking lot?
Yes.
I hope we don't have to.
Okay.
We don't have restricted use at our current spot. It gets parked in the weekends. It is what it is, right? Good
Yeah.
community neighbors. I don't think that'll be the case, but certainly if we needed to add gates in the future, it would be an option for that northern lot.
Okay. Thank you. I just wondered,
All right, any other thoughts, commissioners?
I mean, in general, I'm not a huge fan of getting rid of housing, since I know that we really need that in this community. But I get that this level of intensity of a use needs parking, and Fulton is fully parked most of the time. So, yeah, I'm in support of it in this case. And I can make a motion if no one else wants to say anything, but Kristen has to say. I was just going to note that we have had quite a bit of residential development make progress in that area in the blocks immediately north, with the edge of the Seward Flats on Seward, as well as the Lexington School. I think there's 39 units at Lexington School that recently received low-income housing tax credits. So there has been quite a bit of new residential being added to the community.
Good point. I did think of one other thing related to that fence. Is it possible to like, if it's found that the fence is associated with the other property, could it be, I don't know, I don't want them to have to add a second fence if the one that's there is adequate. But if it's not associated with their property and it's taken down by the other property owner, there will need to be something put there. So I don't know how we accommodate that.
It would be difficult for us to go in 3 years.
Right.
If that fence were to be removed and then require Mr. Gibson to install a new fence, because that fence, it would be a challenging enforcement issue not to take care of it from the get-go, despite, I understand your point.
So I guess I'm
fences.
interested to hear what other commissioners have to say about that situation or what our options are. No one cares.
No, I mean, I agree with you, Laurel. I mean, and perhaps the applicant looks like he might be willing to say something about it, but you're right. I mean, it's wasteful to put a second fence up there when there's a perfectly good fence there, but perhaps we can include in the resolution an obligation in the absence of a fence that the applicant would be required. I know that creates all kinds of compliance and enforcement concerns, but at least it would be in the,
It does, but it also gives us a mechanism to enforce if we become aware that there's a need for it.
yeah.
You could also look at improved landscape screening along there, so should the fence be removed and a new fence not be installed because we just don't know about it, at least there's some buffer that would be installed from the onset.
Okay.
I think that's good.
Okay. If any, I can be in. Okay. Can you help me with that condition, Kristen? Okay. Sorry. Now therefore be it resolved, that the Planning Commission approves a special land use and site plan review request of Construction Simplified Brent Gibson to construct a surface parking lot in a residential zone district at 15 Lexington Avenue Northwest to support a proposed development on the adjoining property for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the project will support Objective 6 of Chapter 5 of the master plan to encourage business investment while balancing economic growth with priorities for neighborhoods, the natural environment, and the quality of the built environment. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of Section 5.12.08.e because the development has been designed to meet all standards. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the proposed improvements will occur on a previously developed site. The potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use on the neighborhood and adjacent properties will be minimized through adequate parking lot screening and landscaping. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare because the proposed use is not anticipated to result in excessive noise, glare, or visual clutter. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the proposed improvements will help reestablish the street wall. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the proposed use will allow redevelopment of a vacant structure. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A, approvals, which is shown on the screen, but I will also read. 1, that the application and plan submitted by the applicant and signed, dated, and stamped by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans except if plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and/or as amended in this resolution. 2, that the use shall operate according to the application and per testimony as recorded in the Planning Commission minutes. 3, that this approval does not include any proposed signs, and any future signs shall be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. 4, that a land use development services or LUDs permit, building permit, and all other required permits be obtained from the City of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. 5, that any expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional special land use review and approval by the Planning Commission. 6, that the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all state laws. 7, that this approval shall take effect 16 calendar days after the date of the Planning Commission decision. 2, that unused curb cuts shall be repaired to city standard and 3.
You read really fast.
Sorry.
I'll try this, that the green space west of the new parking lot on 11 and 15 Lexington be improved with landscaping in accordance with section 51112 to the maximum extent possible, and that a new solid wood fence be installed should the existing fence along the same west lot line be removed at any time.
Yes, I would like to incorporate that into my motion. And that's it.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any final discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. That motion passes. Our next case is 806 Alger Street Southeast.
I don't know who my applicants are for this. Hello, feel free to move up. Sure. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a request by SIP Partners to establish a new coffee and cocktail lounge in an existing building in Alger Heights. And this is before you today due to the alcohol service. It's not a full-service restaurant with alcohol. If it were a full restaurant with alcohol closing by midnight, we could grant that administratively, but they won't have full meals. It really is more of a cafe. So it is before you today for the alcohol service inside and outside. They're also proposing some associated live entertainment, but not as a primary use, just associated as an accessory use to the primary cafe use. The subject property is located at the corner of Alger and Eastern in an existing building. The building currently houses in the back of the building, adjacent to the parking lot, it houses a hair salon, which will remain and it will expand further in the building. I'm not certain what the previous use was in this portion of the building, and I'm sure the applicants can tell us that. Along with the building, the site includes what looks like a lot of the sidewalk. Like you can see Brass Ring next door, all this outdoor seating is actually on the Brass Ring property. And this subject site has private property in front of the building as well. So they're proposing outdoor seating in this area here. According to the applicant, on the Alger side, a lot of the hardscape has been removed and it's now grass. And then this is on the parking lot side, and this is the hair salon, which will remain there. This is a survey of the property, and you can see along the Eastern Avenue frontage what I referenced previously, that there's about 25 feet of the private property there that looks like the sidewalk. So the building has a footprint of about 1,800 square feet in area. It is a two-story building. There are offices above. And there are some minor improvements associated with this, this new use. On the Eastern Avenue elevation, you can see that a new door will be installed along with an overhead door. It doesn't look like it's going all the way to the ground, but it looks like this will be able to be opened. There are no changes proposed on the Alger elevation of the building in the portion of the building in which the cafe will be located. The proposed indoor occupancy is approximately 48, with the additional outdoor seating accommodating up to 20. Limited live entertainment may be provided accessory to the main service use. It is not intended that that entertainment would be the main draw here. They are anticipating 6 to 8 employees. Hours are to be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to midnight, and Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to midnight. Outdoor seating hours are proposed to be consistent with the neighboring businesses with outdoor alcohol service, including Brass Ring and the Old Goat. So, and that would be Sunday through Thursday until 10 p.m. and Friday and Saturday until 11 p.m. Relative to parking, I did mention that there is that large adjacent parking lot that isn't actually a public lot, but it appears to be. It serves the businesses here on Eastern. And thus, parking is adequate. I have received several letters of support from neighboring businesses, and it sounds like folks are excited to have a coffee shop, at least in Alger Heights, which doesn't seem to have one at this time. So in sum, we're looking at the establishment of a cafe and cocktail lounge with alcohol service and outdoor seating with alcohol service, closing by midnight. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Elizabeth? All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Before I invite the applicant up, Kristen did bring to my attention, sorry, Elizabeth, you can sit down, it's not. She found a Facebook picture of the SIP partners at the business that I own with my business partner, because they hosted, my business partner hosted them for a tasting of our products. Now, I don't believe, we don't have a formal partnership or anything like that. I wasn't present for that, but do want to mention it as a potential conflict and take the temperature of the other commissioners on this. As we just discussed, there's no financial relationship with them, but do want to make it public.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion that you don't have a conflict of interest in this case.
Support.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. All right, I'll invite the applicant up then, and you can share any other details you might want to.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing our case today. My name is Jonathan Farman. This is John France. He'll probably have a chance to speak as well. We are actually co-owners of Urban Johnny's Salon, which you saw in the picture. We opened that about 4 years ago, and then we had the opportunity to purchase the building, and then we were left with the question of what do we do with the rest of that space. So I've always wanted a coffee shop, or really just a place where everyone feels welcome, and the best way for me to approach that was to open a beverage location that not only serves cocktails but also serves mocktails and coffee drinks as well. Because my hope is to that as long as you're thirsty, you have a place to go. And so we really got behind this idea and are excited about the potential for Alger Heights. As was mentioned, we have received a ton of support from the neighborhood, and they are extremely excited about that. I'm excited from the standpoint that to be able to own this building. It's kind of the welcoming building of Alger Heights, and so I'm just really ecstatic to give it some life in a new way. We had mentioned food, so we do not have a hood system. So the plan with food is we will have bagels in the morning. That will be our some of our morning offering. Of course, the coffee shop carbs that you can usually find. Our main food at night will be charcuterie. So we will have a slicer right there to be able to prepare fresh shaved meats and cheeses and all sorts of good stuff that go with charcuterie as well. We mentioned entertainment, and that was just our really just our hope to be totally transparent with you. We are not a venue. We are not big enough to be able to do that. So when we mention entertainment, it's just to let you all know that there may be an acoustic guitar playing. There may be a DJ on a Saturday. So it will always be small, because we just simply can't we just can't fit the bodies in there to be able to be a venue. But we do want to offer some entertainment at different times for our clients and guests. Being that we own Urban Johnny's Salon, I know some of you understand what goes on in salons and all the talking that happens and between folks, and we have just received so much excitement from every person that walks in the door. Our stylists are asked daily, what updates they have, and so I think it's been made clear to us that this is something that the community is really excited about, and I'm happy that we have the opportunity to be able to do that for them.
I'm John France. I'm the applicant, I guess, so I probably should say something, but I think he summed it up pretty well. We've had a lot of support. We're really excited about this project. Jonathan not being a drinker, and I am, he does appreciate people that do. And we just want to provide people something for the community, relaxing and collaborative, instead of like a bar or a nightclub. So if you have any questions, please do so.
Any questions for the applicant?
Okay. Regarding the entertainment, is any of that planned for outside? Do you plan to keep kind of your windows closed, or what's the, yeah?
I've always pictured it inside. You mentioned outside, and I was like, oh, I guess that I hadn't really thought of it in that way. The plan since the beginning has been inside.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
So with the outdoor seating, I'm just curious, with it being cold and snowy, you're going to give us a place to eat outside or drink outside in the winter too? Or is it going to be seasonal?
Brass Ring next to us has done a phenomenal job of offering a space even in the winter for folks to come. And so I really, yes, the plan is to be able to offer that space year round. Being that we are so small, we need that space, for our bottom line. So I do think it will be most beneficial for us to be able to create a space in the outside so that we can use it year round. Because we know in Michigan we get a good 2.5 seasons, maybe 3 seasons. So we will want to utilize all the space that we can.
Just a quick follow-up question about outdoor space. So the renderings show your outdoor client space in front of, or the front door, but then there's a picture that y'all submitted with where grass was along the Alger side. Are you anticipating outdoor space utilization along Eastern or along Alger, or both?
Both would be ideal. So there's about there's a 2 sidewalk width right there. So yes, the hope was to put a couple 2 top tables on the side so that we would be able to utilize. We are fortunate to be on a corner that we can utilize a little bit more space. So that was the hope, was that we could do both.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
I'm sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
I think that maybe surprised Elizabeth and I. We didn't understand that was your intent. So you're looking at putting sidewalk seating along, oh shoot, I got disoriented, Alger as well as Eastern? Is that what you're
I
stating?
will do whatever you give me permission to do. It's really simple for me, somebody who doesn't know all the details and rules and regulations, right, to dream. And that's all that we've been able to do. Yes, we were thinking that we would be able to utilize that, but if that is something that we cannot do, then we will nix that yesterday.
So ultimately, the planning commission decides, not me, but it's my job to make sure that they
Great.
hopefully stay informed. And then if we're responsible for implementing their decision, I just want to make sure that we're clear as to what you're asking for, and then they can decide if that's appropriate. So it sounds like there's multiple seating opportunities that they're looking for along the street frontages adjacent their business.
There's also MLCC regulations that will kick in, assuming you wanted to serve alcoholic beverages in both locations. It would have to be clearly defined, and that's now defined slightly differently than in the years past. The MLCC has kind of changed their perspective, and now it's actually a barrier of some sort, whether it's a physical fence or a rope or something, planters, where in the past it was a different color brick or just something visual to separate it. So that would have to be considered too if there are two areas of seating. It does complicate things just a little bit with the MLCC. So you'd have to get creative with that probably.
And we can work with the applicant on the site plan as long as we know that the planning commission is comfortable with the general use of the sidewalk space. I think they do have a little bit of land between even the face of building and the sidewalk. So if the planning commission is comfortable generally with outdoor seating, with the hours of operation and perhaps some, no, I didn't hear entertainment, then we can work with that.
I think the only thing too I would call out is so seating outside on Alger, given the time, your adjacency to residential along Alger versus Eastern is something I think the planning commission should take into account. I mean, you've already got outdoor seating at the adjacent use, but it's not right across the street from residential. So just something else to be thinking about.
All right, any other questions for the applicant at this point? Okay, thanks. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today in this case, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. All right, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any additional questions or discussion?
I think this is well, first of all, it's filling a vacant space, but also just adding to the vibrancy of this really blooming neighborhood with a beautiful library, restaurants, enough parking, that this is a creative use. When I saw I thought, oh, is this a franchise, having a coffee shop and cocktails? But what a wonderful merge of two ways to offer the community space to get together for the full day. So I think this is a good addition. I think the outdoor seating, I understand on Alger, particularly for a coffee shop, is a nice addition to a neighborhood. It just creates more of that street activity that I think adds to it. I think of the Wealthy Street Bakery and what that has done. So I am in support of this project.
I would add to that, the transparency on the north side facing Alger has been it's unfortunate lack of transparency there. And I think having seating along there would actually be a tremendous enhancement. And it's not a large space. And so regards to the residential nearby, I think it would be minimal impact because of the limited size of the outdoor seating available there. So I would be in favor of this.
Yeah, groups of two create a different amount of noise than groups of six. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Commissioner Rosenblum, because I was going back and forth on whether the seating would be good or bad there because of the lack of transparency. So I see your point, and yeah, I'm in support as well.
I think that first structure in appears to be office in nature as well, if that helps, beside the library. So there's a little bit of a buffer between where the residential starts.
Yeah, I'm totally supportive of it too. I would ask staff, it's not included in the proposed resolution, but would we want to include the hour limitation for indoor and outdoor use in the resolution? And maybe I just didn't see it, so if I missed it. Otherwise, I'm happy to add it.
I do think it's always helpful if we add it as a condition, just for clarity's sake when we're communicating with the applicant, that we're not digging through minutes and application forms. So thank you for noting that.
Yep. If everybody's cool, I'll make a motion. Now therefore it be resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of SIP Partners LLC, John France, to establish a cafe and bar with alcohol service, outdoor seating, and limited live entertainment at 806 Alger Street Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the vitality of the local economy by encouraging investment, diversifying the economic base, and expanding employment opportunities, and provide a mix of uses in the commercial area. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.8.e because the proposed outdoor seating has been designed to meet all the standards and requirements with the modifications permitted by the zoning ordinance. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the proposed use will support a desired mixed-use character of the neighborhood. Potential adverse effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because given the relatively small size of the outdoor seating, associated impacts are anticipated to be minimal. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, smoke, or odors, because the limited scale and hours of the operation will inherently limit the intensity and impact of the use, and the site is served by a large shared parking lot. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the outdoor seating will contribute to the vitality and walkability of this business district. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services do already exist or would be provided at no additional cost because the site is currently improved with public infrastructure. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the use is not anticipated to result in nuisances that require code enforcement actions, and the use will encourage other investment in the area. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, the proposed location for alcohol sales will be an asset to the neighborhood because the use will contribute to the vitality of the district. Support of the proposed establishment has been expressed, and the use will be unique as compared to other neighborhood establishments. The use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the proposed hours of operation are consistent with the operations of other establishments in the vicinity. The use as proposed to be operated by the applicant will not have any or minimum secondary negative effects on the neighborhood because the use will be relatively small in scale and the hours will match existing outdoor seating uses in the neighborhood. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard conditions set A, which is on your screen and have been previously read. In addition, hours of operations will be limited inside from Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to midnight, and Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to midnight. Outdoor seating hours will be limited to Sunday through Thursday until 10 p.m. and Friday and Saturday until 11 p.m. That is the conclusion of my motion.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any final discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Our next case is 1944 South Division Ave. And I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting. For the next case after this division, for 526 Maynard Ave Northwest, we have had a request by the applicant to postpone because of some moving pieces. So just in case you're here from the public and not aware of those moving pieces, that we won't have a full presentation, but we will do a public hearing for that since it was noticed. So just as a heads up.
The next item on the agenda is 1944 South Division, and the applicant is requesting approval to use a former theater known as the Four Star. Former theater is a cultural arts venue and rental facility with alcohol service. They're also asking for a waiver of a portion of the required number of parking spaces. This is before you today because assembly uses such as auditoriums, cinemas, theaters, banquet halls, and similar uses require special land use in the TNTBA zone district. Alcohol uses also require the special land use. So the subject property is on the east side of South Division, just north of Burton. And it is where the blue square is. It's a little hard to see in this aerial, but there is a parking lot to the north. There's a Popeyes restaurant to the south, and then at the corner was the original Popeyes restaurant. And I will show you an older aerial photo. This is current day. I don't know why it's so blurry, but you can see the parking lot to the north, the theater, and then the Popeyes with the drive-through. This is an aerial from 2006. I don't think I needed to go back this far because I think the Popeyes was constructed in 2013. But what I wanted to show you here is originally originally, at least back as far as 2006. Before then, there were probably buildings near filling in all these parking lots. But in recent history, there was parking to both the north and the south of the theater building. The theater was constructed in 1938, and once the theater closed, I'm sure the applicant can tell you when that was, but subsequent to that, it was a concert venue or auditorium, and then I think it was a community center or youth center, and I think that's probably what you see on the parking lot here that looks like there's like Foursquare or something. So this parking lot to the south used to be associated with the subject property, and then what you see just north of 1970 South Division was the drive-through for Popeyes at the corner. So then Popeyes, they wanted to build a new building, and rather than build on the corner, they moved north. I'm only telling you this because I remember having lots of conversations with the developer of that Popeyes, and he kept coming into the office wanting to tear down this building, and we persuaded him not to. So I guess we have a building, but we lost the parking lot. So I don't know. And I mentioned that because parking will come up in this conversation. So that's what I wanted to tell you there. So it's improved with, we have a fast food restaurant here. We have a number of mixed use commercial buildings on the west side of Division. To the south of Burton, we, have the business district, and we have lots of public parking there. No public parking north of Burton, but we have parking lot at the southeast corner, and then lots of public parking behind the buildings that front on Division. So that would be public parking in the vicinity. The property is located in the area that's addressed by the South Division Corridor Plan that was adopted in late November of 2020, but that doesn't seem right. It seems like it would have been 2019. The area is identified as Focus Area 5, and this particular site is identified. You can see it here, I'm pointing to it. And the plan calls for adaptive reuse of this building for an active community use as an anchor for the district. And the applicant has reached out to community stakeholders, including Garfield Park Neighborhood Association and the South Division Granville Corridor Improvement Authority, and both of those groups do support this use as it comports with the plan. The subject site is improved with the theater building, which is about 11,000 square feet. The theater takes up about half of the site. To the north is it's paved and it's improved, or it's simply paved, and it's surrounded with a chain link fence. The applicant intends to remove the fence and landscape the parking lot to bring the site closer to the parking lot landscaping requirements. In all, there'll be about 22 parking spaces in the lot. I don't seem to have done any captures of Google Street View captures of the building, which I think is kind of funny. I usually do that, but the applicant is proposing eventually also to do a small addition on the south. It's shown green room, and it looks like the handicap accessible entrance here. But that wouldn't add capacity, and that would be something that they would need a variance for because it is in the rear yard. Restoration of the marquee out front is also proposed, and that would also need a variance for the restoration of the sign and the addition of an electronic message center. So relative to the use of the space, the applicant is proposing this to be a community arts venue, and I'll defer to the applicant to talk about what that really means. Hours of operation are expected to be 9 a.m. to midnight daily. No outdoor activities are proposed. This is a former theater. All the seats have been removed, however. At standing room, the maximum capacity would be 1,000. Seated would be 500. So it's a pretty large space. Although Initially, the applicant intends to start with something smaller. I think the restoration of this building will take some time. The applicant submitted a private event contract and an alcohol management plan, along with where all the security cameras would go. That has been passed on to the police department for review, and they're satisfied with that. At this time, any alcohol service associated with events would be provided by a licensed caterer. But being that this is in a corridor improvement district, the applicant may be pursuing a liquor license through the corridor improvement district. A standard condition that we often impose on banquet facilities in our neighborhood commercial districts, or actually anywhere, but it's mostly in our neighborhood commercial districts where it is an issue, is a condition that the live entertainment shall be an amenity to the primary use as a banquet facility. In this case, we're really looking at an entertainment facility. We're not looking at a nightclub. They're not proposing to have a nightclub, but they do propose to have individual ticket sales for events, so that normal prohibition on those ticket sales to events couldn't apply here if the venue is to operate as intended. Now, this is a large facility, and as I mentioned, up to 1,000 people it could accommodate. The applicant does acknowledge that that's a lot of people coming to this place, and he reached out to the South Division Corridor Improvement Authority, the Rapid, and the city's mobile GR department, and talked about traffic and pedestrian accessibility to this site and within this district. And I think those are conversations that need to be ongoing, but the applicant does intend on working with the city and other stakeholders on a plan for traffic and pedestrian management. So, given that, and given the fact that this probably will take some time to get up to that maximum capacity, the Planning Commission may wish to consider sort of a tiered or phased approach here. If you're amenable to this use, an approval of 200, 250, 300, as might be usual for a banquet hall on the larger side, might be something that the Planning Commission may wish to consider. And then if, when the applicant is ready, they could come back for an amendment to the special land use for that additional capacity with the provision of a parking and traffic and pedestrian management plan. In addition, we might want to add those conditions that we've been looking at recently with banquet facilities, no alcohol consumption in the parking lot, no congregating in the parking lot to mitigate noise on neighbors, and no parking in the adjacent neighborhood. So that could be something that could be included in the facility agreement so that it could be enforced. Relative to parking, as I mentioned, the capacity is large, and at the maximum of 1,000, 250 parking spaces would be required, with the maximum capacity of seated occupants, 125 spaces are required. an on-site parking lot of 22 is available, along with the neighborhood parking lots that I showed you earlier, along with public transportation along Burton and Division. So just for example, if you were to set the maximum capacity at 250 in the short term, 63 parking spaces would be required for 375. So that brings the requirement down quite a bit if in the short term the capacity is limited, with the expectation that capacity would grow in the future. And so with waivers for public transit and the availability of public parking, the Planning Commission could grant that waiver. I think I've covered everything. So we're looking at a nonprofit community arts venue with an ultimate capacity of 1,000. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Commissioners, any questions at this time? All right, thanks. I'll invite the applicant up then if there's other details you want to share with us.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Marcus Ringnalda. I am the owner of the former Four Star Theater and the founder of the nonprofit Friends of Four Star, who will soon own the building and is raising funds for a renovation. So, and thank you, Elizabeth. You actually touched on a lot of the history of this in ways that really tell a lot of the story that needs to be told. So I appreciate that. So yeah, it was brought up, what is a community arts venue? And, you know, this is really a space meant to bring community together in virtually any way that you could conceive. I myself am a historic preservationist and know that this place used to seat 990 people. And so the goal with our full renovation to achieve an occupant load at or near 1,000 is a testament to that, and also symbolic from a regional draw that we really think Burton Heights and the city and the Four Star can be an anchor in that neighborhood, and really something that brings some community pride and identity to that part of the city. So anything from weddings to quinceañeras to concerts, you know, think about the types of groups that might play at Frederick Meyer Gardens. We want to create a space with a quality that those same performers might be drawn to the Four Star, traveling comedy acts, but also to be, as the nonprofit, really an incubator of local talent and building partnerships with so many of the great arts organizations in our town. So our goal is to create a place that can host 200 events a year. And that means it's going to be a lot of things. And we do see alcohol service as key to really creating a space that can sustain itself and decide, you know, in service to its mission, how much money does it need to generate itself. So that is why we do have a goal to secure a corridor license for liquor service. And you may have seen from the plan with the addition on it, there's toilets all over the place. That's really intentional about getting to that 1,000-person occupant load. And the plans are still really being developed about how to build out the limited number of spaces that are not the auditorium. But there's going to be a lot of bathrooms and some concession area. The concessions aren't going to be really designed to serve alcohol to 1,000 people in a super efficient manner. It's really more, the concessions area is more size for the banquet type event. But yeah, as a nonprofit, we're going to be evolving in how we're administered, but we're really building a 3-year plan here to be intentional about bringing in a variety of events. So it will not be weddings for 52 weekends a year, but we may try 5 or 6 of them in our first year of full operation. And just a note on this potential for phasing, the last major investment in this facility was in the early to mid 90s, and it was a youth center. So the infrastructure that's there is really in phenomenal shape. We believe with some very minor investments, things like checking the sprinklers to fix anything that's leaking, a couple running toilets, heat and fresh air, that we can work with the building department towards temporary occupancy like within the next 3 or 4 months. And then through all of 2022, while we do raise funds for the major renovation, that we can do further community engagement, further fundraising, and just really speak to the neighbors about what this place is all about. So we're really excited to press go on that, and within 3 or 4 months to start hosting people in this building, and really to speak to the letters of support from the neighborhood. There is a suggestion of ongoing coordination, and that's fully what we expect to do. And we think it's a very unique opportunity to get this space up and running, to build some more trust and excitement for the project. So with that, I'll take questions.
All right, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. So in our packet, there is a little bit of a contradiction. So on one hand, it said that there are no proposed outdoor activities, but then in your alcohol management attachment here, you said that occasionally there might be events held outdoors in the parking lot with alcohol service, and I wanted you to.
Yeah, so that the latter is an idea that has come up recently, and the possibility of even screening films maybe on the north side of the building. So there is a possibility we would like to build towards, and might actually build some infrastructure on the northeast corner there to serve, say, food trucks and things like that, to really fill it, not have anyone parking in the parking lot save for, maybe a food truck, and just have people gather in lawn chairs and watch a movie. We'd love to be able to do that if we could.
And then, did you do any engagement with the neighbors that are directly behind you directly, or did you just work through the neighborhood association?
Yes, I did pass out flyers to everyone, and I've owned the building for 4 years, so have spoken to quite a few neighbors there. There is generally excitement. To be honest, I don't talk in detail about what a nightly event will look like. But there's general sense of excitement about it's going to be something. And, a lot of people, they remember when it was a nightclub, or when they were kids, it was a youth center. So what comes out is this has always been an anchor in the neighborhood when it's been in operation. Yeah, it will. There are some homes in close proximity, some vacant, some not. And, it did have a reputation as a very loud venue in the late 70s when bands like Hall & Oates played there and things like that. But so it is an entertainment venue close to some homes. I have witnessed a lot of turnover in those homes already, and a lot of like multi-generational families and things like that. But there are a couple vacant homes as well that I've inquired about purchasing. But there's nothing really, no momentum in those efforts.
Can you elaborate on the parking plan? Elizabeth spoke to some of it, but just
yeah.
thoughts from
So
you?
that city lot is really what we've been banking on as the primary parking area for patrons who are traveling there by car. I will note that this programming is meant to appeal to people who can bike and scoot and ride the bus, where the bus stop is basically 100 feet away from our front door. But there was no one more motivated than myself to provide a great experience from those traveling from that parking lot to the building. Division Avenue is complicated. It's a 30-mile-an-hour zone there. I wish we had a dedicated bus lane that just had buses, but cars go by at 60 miles an hour every second of the day. So I have been active in conversations about trying to establish what's possible here. I think Cutler is that next street to the south. There's potential for an enhanced pedestrian crosswalk across Division there. It might be a little bit too close to Burton to implement. Same thing on the north. It's difficult to get anything very close to the building that would achieve that kind of safety. But there are practical things like some of the programming on the light signals and pedestrian crossings that I've talked with various stakeholders about, and lighting in the parking lot and the pedestrian walkways that would get you to the building. So I'm highly motivated to continue conversations with the people who can help implement these things, and it's all on their radar. But there are things like the timing of street improvements through MDOT that have to be considered. So some of those things might be 4 years off. But the Friends of Four Star, our organization, is actively advocating for a better experience around Burton and Division.
Do you expect that most of the use will be in the evening?
No, I actually expect most of it would be daytime. A lot of student-oriented programming. Weekends would probably be primarily evenings, but when I say 200, which would take multiple years to achieve, a lot of it would, to my earlier point, be about relationships with organizations everywhere from the symphony to the startup group, dance group in the neighborhood.
Okay.
So there will be a lot. I mean, I hope there's something many nights of the year, but there's how many weekends? 200 events. You can't do that with just weekends. So.
Any other questions? No? All right, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about this case at 1944 South Division, please come forward, state your name, and share your thoughts with us. All right, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, thoughts on this use?
Well, I'm really excited to see this building be reactivated. I think it's a cool building, and that it shows so much potential. So I'm excited about this project. That being said, I am a little concerned about the outdoor events possibly in the parking lot that is already providing less parking than is adequate potentially for this use. And so I wanted to discuss that. I'm not a firm no on it, but I do have some qualms. I don't know.
I'm not the planning commission, but there is the option, at least initially, for us to simply look at the up to 4 events per year under the temporary use permit policy, so that we can better understand how these events may or may not impact the neighbors, how it may or may not impact available parking. And so that could be an option, at least initially, since their management plan says occasionally we do have a tool to be able to allow that administratively versus the planning commission assigning those land use rights. And then when and if they come back to expand their occupancy in the future, that could be maybe a more informed decision and plan that could be put into place for the planning commission to consider.
I'm on board with that. Did anybody else, was anybody else concerned about
I
that?
actually was wondering if Mr. Rinaldo would mind answering, would there be potential for an indoor and an outdoor event to be going on simultaneously?
We haven't considered events that would be going on simultaneously, but things like concessions and alcohol service could, serving an outdoor event would be a possibility.
I'm just trying to avoid 1,000-person, potentially future, right? 1,000-person event indoor, 500 event outdoor. That seems like that would be problematic in terms of parking and other things too.
Yeah, I think that would be a logistical problem. So nothing has emerged that would suggest that would happen.
Anyone else with thoughts?
I just agree that this is a historic site. It's an anchor that could really help revitalize the area and take what is just symbolic of what, as the applicant has said. And that said, I guess with the parking, I have some concerns, but I also think that if you're coming downtown, you have to park and cross streets and things to go to the Van Andel or to the convention center and things like that. And I would hope it would also start developing eating places and things like that surrounded, so you're having simultaneous reasons to walk and make a more pedestrian accessible and friendly area.
Yeah, I share support for this. Frankly, there's ample parking near this location. It's really just around education and activation for people in this community. And to Commissioner Shannon's point, we all do this all the time. So I'm supportive of the use. I think that Kristen's point around special use for outdoor events, as the applicant kind of figures out what that looks like, use that tool now versus adding additional use under this approval makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm very supportive of the project.
So in our draft resolution, there is a question mark next to our suggested kind of phased occupancy for 250 individuals. How do folks feel about that? Yes?
It seems like the right idea to me, but for reference, I did look up Wealthy Theater as
Yeah,
an
me too.
example. It seats 400.
It does. Yeah, I heard that from the building official. I was going to interject with that.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I looked at the parking too, and they have about 50 spots behind it that they share and can get after 6, and then there's another smaller parking lot plus, street parking, so.
So it seems rather arbitrary, but I would wonder why we would restrict it to not, why wouldn't we leave it at like 400 instead of 250? What's the difference here?
Sure.
I've been approaching this like it's basically the bathrooms that are going to drive occupant load. And there's no way we're going to have approval on that side from building until the major renovation. If it didn't come across, like the idea of eventually getting approval for 1,000 is very, very important. But practically, we will not be achieving that for at least a year.
So there's that. I think also having maybe a more detailed plan for where employees will park, how to shuttle back and forth, whether there's valet options available. I would tend to concur that I think that there's adequate parking in the general area. It's just maybe working with the owner to say, how do we formalize that and how do we make sure that that plan is in place? And it's just one of those balances within our TBA districts especially. But let's go with the bathrooms.
Okay, well then, I'm willing to make a motion here if no one else wants to. Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of Friends of Four Star Inc., Marcus Ronalda, to establish a nonprofit cultural arts venue with live entertainment and alcohol service in the former Four Star Theater at 1944 South Division Avenue for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will increase the mix of uses in a commercial area, and the Southtown Division Corridor Plan recognizes the need for additional businesses to be located along the corridor, fostering the ability to renovate and rehabilitate existing buildings. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.08.e because the parking lot will be brought closer to compliance with current dimensional screening and buffering requirements. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood because the proposed use will be consistent with the desired mixed-use nature of the neighborhood and will provide a desired amenity in the neighborhood. The building has been in existence since 1938 and has hosted large gatherings in the past. Potential adverse effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because the operator or their designee will be on premises during events, and adequate landscape buffering will be provided between the subject sites and neighboring residential uses. The proposed uses will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic noise or glare, because events will cease by midnight. Events will be fully contained indoor. I'll strike that one for now, so you can do the administrative. I'm not sure.
It's okay, it's already inherent within the ordinance, so
Okay.
you'd be fine to say that and still allow him the rights under the ordinance.
Okay. Parking lot landscaping will be provided in the existing parking lot. Several public parking lots are located in walking distance from the facility. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment, because use of the building as proposed could bring additional pedestrian traffic to this area of the neighborhood, and additional landscaping in the parking lot will reestablish the street wall. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city, because the management plan and conditions associated with the special land use approval will limit nuisances that require police or code enforcement actions. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, it is demonstrated that the area is underserved by the proposed use, and that the proposed location for alcohol sales will demonstrably be an asset to the neighborhood, because there are no other similar facilities in the immediate vicinity, and the use is supported by community groups. The use or change in use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood, because the use is located on Division Avenue, a main commercial corridor where such uses are appropriate. Adjacent or nearby parks, playgrounds, religious institutions, or schools will not be adversely affected, because there will be no sale of alcohol for off-site consumption. The use as proposed will be operated by the applicant will not have any or minimal negative secondary effects on the neighborhood, because the applicant has procedures prepared so that the use will be operated in a manner that has the potential to minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A, approvals, which is now showing on the screen. 2, that the event space may accommodate up to 250 individuals, subject to occupancy determination by the city's building official and applicable building and fire codes. An increase in occupancy shall necessitate an amendment to the special land use accompanied with a plan to address traffic, parking, and pedestrian circulation to and from the site. 3, that events shall cease by midnight with the premises vacated 1 hour thereafter. 4, that the operator and/or their designee shall be on the premises during all events. 5, that a noise analysis shall be conducted by a qualified engineer, and if necessary, the building shall be soundproof to meet the requirements of the Noise Control Ordinance, Chapter 151, Article 5 of the City Code. 6, that doors and windows shall remain closed during events. 7, that an outdoor smoking area shall be designated in an appropriate location and reflected on the plan submitted for LUD's permitting. 8, that the parking lot shall be landscaped to bring the site closer to compliance with the requirements of Section 5.11.11. 9, that an indoor events license shall be obtained from the office of the city clerk. That's it.
Support.
Okay.
Well, I started to overthink my response to you, and I do wonder if there'd be benefit to, under 3C, where you stated events will be fully contained indoors. I'm wondering if after that statement, it would instead read, events will be fully contained indoors except as otherwise permitted by Section 5935H, which is the temporary event section I mentioned.
Great, I would welcome that amendment.
H.
Still support.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Congratulations. Our next case is 526 Maynard Ave Northwest, also known as 3059 Lake Michigan Drive Northwest.
So this is a project, I don't have anything in front of me here, so I don't have any reference material. But this is a planned redevelopment that came to the Planning Commission some time ago. And they have gotten final site plan review. However, as they are going through final engineering, they've determined a couple of things that need to be modified, namely the the detention pond at Maynard, that would need to be enlarged and necessitating moving the northerly drive further north. The applicant is also anticipating a maintenance building, storage shed at the back of the site, as well as some other modifications. The MISHDA has requested some site changes to accommodate additional parking. And as those things are being fleshed out, the applicant is requesting that today's consideration for a minor deviation to the site plan be postponed to the next meeting on February 10th. So I'm not prepared to go into all the details, but I wanted to tell you what they were requesting and that they are requesting the matter be tabled.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. That seems reasonable. In light of that, I won't have the applicant up to share about those details. I think we understand that there's a couple pieces that need to be figured out yet, but I will open up the public hearing now for this case since it was noticed, just in case you're here and want to share your thoughts. We'll also be leaving the public hearing open for the next meeting, so if folks come then, they can share their thoughts. Anyone on this case? Okay, great. I'll close the public hearing and turn to commissioners for a motion. Is it a motion to table or to postpone? Postpone.
To
To February 10.
I move to postpone till the next meeting, February 10th. Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That case is postponed. And our final case is 540 Russwood Street Northeast.
North Point Christian Schools is requesting special land use approval to facilitate expansion of the existing elementary school on the site. The intent is to construct a new 7,600 square foot building addition and also expand the parking lot. Part of the site work will be done in an area with steep slopes. The project was previously approved by the Planning Commission on October 11th, 2018. And unfortunately, the applicant was not able to take action on the approval, and the special land use approval expired. It does need to be acted upon within a year, and they were not able to do that. So they are back today with substantially the same project that went to the Planning Commission in 2018. The master plan designates this area as institutional, which it comports with its institutional use as a school. It is surrounded by a low-density residential neighborhood, and it's near the intersection of Coit and 3 Mile. The site's about 6.7 acres in size, and the site has been improved with an elementary school operated by North Point Christian Schools since about 1973. I'm not sure if this is still accurate, but at the time that we wrote this in 2018, about 440 students attended school on this site. This conceptual plan shows the existing school plus the new building and new parking lot. Number 4 here is the new building, and then there's the reconfigured parking lot with sort of the drop-off lanes. Number 5 is the drop-off area. Ingress is generally, oh gosh, I'm disoriented now. So I guess this is going to be at the south part of the site, and then one way through exiting the other curb cut. According to the application, the proposed addition will add 6 new classrooms to the school. The proposed addition will provide space for enhanced science and fine arts learning opportunities and provide additional space for testing and support services. Rather than significantly expanding the capacity of the school, the new building is intended to provide an upgraded learning environment for current students. The structure will be designed with a blend of masonry, glass, shingles, and siding to complement the existing school building and nearby residential homes. It is proposed to have a sloped roof. The site is proposed, the site presently has 54 on-site parking spaces, 18 in the north lot and 36 in the south lot. And the applicant proposes to reconfigure the parking lot, a parking lot to accommodate the new building and allow for continual vehicle circulation for student drop-off and pickup. An additional 10 parking spaces will be added, bringing the on-site total to 64 parking spaces. For the purposes of this request, only the additional parking need created by the addition is being considered. And with the 7,600 square foot addition, 14 parking spaces are required to accommodate the new building. And so there's a deficit of 4 parking spaces, and the Planning Commission is able to waive this deficit of 4 parking spaces. In the staff report, I think I carried this over from 2018, where we talked about it as an administrative departure to be granted by staff. It's something that staff can grant, but since we're already here at the Planning Commission and it's under the threshold of staff being able to grant that waiver, we're asking the Planning Commission to incorporate the waiver of the 4 parking spaces in your decision if you are amenable to this. Additionally, I should mention that the applicant finds that their daily parking demand is about 56, which is less than the 64 that are being provided. So the applicant is finding that the parking that will be on site to be adequate for their needs. Onto the natural features. This slide shows the area of the site that is a steep slope. A steep slope is defined as a grade of 20% or greater. And the steep slope on the site is about, it's less than 5,000 square feet. The Planning Commission or staff is allowed to allow an encroachment into a steep slope that has a combined area of less than 10,000 square feet, which this area does. and they're proposing to encroach into that steep slope for about 2,600 square feet. And so this would meet the criteria for a waiver. I can move on to this slide, which this area shows the area of disturbance, which is about 2,600 square feet. Now, this area is slightly larger than when the plan came to the Planning Commission previously. At that time, the portion to be graded was about 1,500 square feet. Although the plan is substantially the same, the applicant did a more refined calculation and determined that the area of the steep slope was slightly larger, as is the area to be graded. Additionally, a retaining wall that was originally proposed in that steep slope area has been removed. And I'll defer to the applicant to talk about details there, but suffice it to say, it was removed for safety concerns, given that this is a campus serving children. So, so the encroachment became slightly larger. Relative to neighborhood impact, there was an open house held back in 2018, and there were a number of neighbors that attended. The applicant didn't go out and hold another neighborhood meeting, given that it was substantially the same plan. However, I did receive several letters of correspondence just since yesterday, which have been incorporated in the packet. One letter expressed concerns about the current traffic conditions associated with the school operation, including speeding, reckless driving, and vehicle queues for student pickup and drop-off, that they block residential driveways. Additionally, I've received 3 letters of support, which were incorporated in the packet, and I think the applicant has another one that I wasn't able to incorporate. So in sum, we're looking at an addition to an existing private elementary school in a neighborhood setting, and with a slight parking waiver and encroachment into a steep slope. Do you have any questions for me?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions? All right, thank you. I'll invite the applicant up for other details.
Feel free to, move to
Oh, just up or down?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'll see if I can figure out technology.
I can also.
Karen didn't make it. Okay. I'm Rob Behrens. I'm with Naderveld. Also happen to be a board member and a parent of a North Point student. And I went to this school back in 1974 when North Point first accommodated or purchased it. Todd Talsma is here. He's our head of schools. So he's here as well. Our elementary principal, I think it's exit time. They were going to try to get here. But if she shows up, we'll introduce her. But the school was built in 1960, so it's been there 62 years. We acquired it, I believe, in 73, and I think we started occupying it in 74. And we had one addition back in the day. It's right by that number 5 there. That was an addition in 1985. But in 2018, we did come here. We were at about the same point, actually had a few less students than we have today. The need is there for space, and in 2018 we were doing the same thing we are today, and that is we have to do some testing in the airlock between the front 2 doors of the school and do some creative things. We've used every square inch of the building. We were doing a capital campaign at the time, and for whatever reason we weren't getting the money. We couldn't figure out why, and we were frustrated, but we figured there was a reason. And then 2020 happened, and 2021. Enrollment went down, and obviously the capital campaign stopped. Well, this past year, this season, we've got back to the pre-pandemic levels, and actually have a few extra students. We are really seeing the need for the increased space. And in the last 2 months, we not only finished our capital campaign, but we exceeded it. So unlike 2018, we have the money today to go out and to build it. Upon your approval, we actually are going to hopefully have a meeting tomorrow with the general contractor and get the process started to hopefully start doing some work in April, with the hopes of later this year, mid-September, being able to put students in it. So what has really changed? It's the same 7,600 square foot building. It's a shingled roof. I did see one Facebook post from the neighborhood association that they didn't think it fit the neighborhood, but I think the design and talking with the architect is more to be a residential type of a setting with a shingled roof and a pitched roof with, you know, glass and siding than having an institutional building that's all brick with a flat roof and having the neighbors look at rooftop units. That finished floor does sit about 8 feet below College Avenue, so there's quite a grade difference there if you've been out that way. Same parking revisions as last time. We actually met with a gentleman on site, we didn't get the notification that the meeting was here. We showed up at 11:20, and there was a gentleman there that was going to speak to this, and his concern was he actually lives to the south end in this area. His concern was just to make sure that wherever the steep slope impact was, that we were collecting our drainage, which we are. We've got leaching basins and pipe all planned and designed in. Water and sewer are available. The steep slope area, there was a little retaining wall. This actually shows it perfectly. Oh, it's on my screen. Right there?
I went back.
Okay, so I'm going to step away from the mic a minute, but in 2018, we had a little wall at the southeast corner of the building. In this area. And over the course of the last couple of years, as we talked about it, there's a lot of sledding there. We're kind of a community park. We chose not to fence it out. We love having people come use our playground and the sledding hills. And the principal looked at us and said, why would you put a 3-foot wall where kids are going to slide down? So we are impacting the steep slope in that area just a little bit. We're below the threshold, but Elizabeth, it was in the original approval, so we kept it in here. So that was the concern there. And then the LA plan, landscape plan that we're proposing, we're going to screen stuff on that slope there. There's plantings planned, canopy coverage calculations that we have to go through with the permitting process. I guess the last two things I'll say is we had 2 letters and 2 emails of support today. Elizabeth got 3 of them. And then we talked to this gentleman about drainage. He was in favor of the project, but concerned about drainage, and we assured him that we were going to be taking care of that. Regarding traffic, I guess I will say this. When we implemented this in 2015, we have 1,200 plus feet of curb line on our side of the street. Not impacting the neighbors on the other side, but on our side of the street. We can't control everybody to be on our side. But our staff, our principals, they're out there with walkie-talkies every day. We send letters to our parents, reminding them to not park. And when we see people parking there, Karen, I wish she was here to speak to it, they get a teacher to go over there and say, you can't park here. So we're trying to be sensitive. I think it's better than it was prior to 2015. We love being here. We hope we're an asset to the community, and we hope that you'll approve this, and we'll be ready to go. I don't know if Todd wants to add anything? Unless you have any questions for us?
All right, thanks. Commissioners, any questions for the applicants?
On the parking lot itself, Elizabeth mentioned it, but your experience is important relative to how many parking spaces you need because you've been there so long. Can you just reiterate how many parking spots you typically use?
I'd say we use the 55 to 60. There's usually a couple spots there. I think, when it looks like there's not enough parking is when the drop off and pickup, because what you end up with is some of the little cherubs that are preschool, the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, while they can drive up and there's people out there by the buildings or by the back of the buildings. Some parents, especially first-time parents, those of us that my third child is a senior this year, it's like, well, they're the third child. They'll be fine for themselves. But we do have that, especially in the front. Some people like to park in that front parking lot and walk their children in versus just drop them off. So there's a half hour in the morning from what I hear. I don't go over there much anymore, but I think there is one neighbor here to speak to it potentially, but we're trying to be good neighbors. And I think anytime anybody's called, Karen talks to them, and we're always happy to have them come in and talk to us if we're blocking a driveway. We try to do the best we can. So we feel that's enough parking for our needs, for our staff and things.
Do you have many students from the direct neighborhood that walk or bike to school?
Yes, we do, and that number is increasing. People are intentionally moving into that neighborhood when houses become available, and they're off the market very soon. And so I know one of my employees lives in the neighborhood, and just this year, we go out and we put signs when somebody, enrolls in our school, welcome to North Point Christian Community, that type of thing. And just in her street alone have been 3 new families that moved into the neighborhood specifically to attend North Point Christian Elementary. And I think, Rob spoke to it, that we do want to be a good neighbor. And I think one of the things that we do is we do allow our facilities to be used when we're not there, and trust our neighborhood and love working hand in hand with them. And so it really is a community park, especially in the summer months, when it's really quiet there. And but even now in the winter months, you'll regularly see children walking with their parents, carrying their sleds and using our hill for sledding purposes. And we don't want that to go away. We want that to be a continuation of how we can work hand in hand with our community.
Thank you. Maybe this is a question for staff, but has the city looked at traffic calming, or has there been any requests for a study there related to impacts?
I am not aware of any. That's not to say we haven't. I don't know. We didn't confirm with our mobile GR department.
Is this addition going to increase the number of students, or does this just add enhancement to the facility?
The whole impetus for this project is to serve our constituents there now well. Right now, as Rob alluded to, in the airlocks you have special testing that's going on. Our specials, we don't have room for music or arts. STEM is a big deal. We call it STEAM because we want science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. And so that will allow us to better enhance the experience of our families who are paying for this, and so again, it gives us the opportunity to enhance the learning opportunity for our existing students. I can't say that some won't come, but that's not the impetus of the project.
My question was along the same lines, just out of curiosity. There's a couple of remodels, additions, rebuilds, et cetera, and it does kind of seem like it's kind of growing or morphing, I guess. Is there plans to make this campus larger? Or are you going to be back to see us in 5 years with a similar plan, but less parking? Like, what's going on here?
Hopefully it's a new head of school at that time. No, and right now, we believe this probably maxes out our property at this point in time. We have been approached by other families in other areas. Would we consider allowing them to build us an elementary in another area? So those discussions, we're looking at other areas if that were to be the need at this point in time.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today on this case, please come forward, state your name, and share your thoughts with us. And we'll have Kristen run the 3-minute timer for me.
Hey, thank you. My name's Matt Patulski. I live at 2733 Sinclair Ave, which is directly opposite the egress for the south parking lot. I've lived there since 2007. I sent a letter this morning. I missed the deadline for the 9 a.m. Packet. So I'm going to summarize my remarks from that letter, and you all should have a PDF version of that with Ms. Zeller. But basically, my concern is that living across the street from North Point Christian, I'm asking the commission to, at this time, not approve the project for several reasons, and some of which you've asked through your questions. I believe it'll add to the congestion, it'll add to pedestrian risk, and that the school already causes. And I don't believe that the current addition that they're proposing is comparable in its aesthetics to the existing school or the mid-century modern neighborhood. To talk about congestion, traffic is a problem. Every morning, every afternoon, during drop-off and pickoff, but then also for events that can happen throughout the day, in the evenings, or on weekends. If you're aware of these events, you know to navigate around the neighborhood, around North Point, but if you're not aware of them, you get stuck in the congestion, you get stuck in crowded streets. And it doesn't just impact the areas immediately around the school, it goes out to the entry points of the neighborhood. You're talking about Coit and Russwood, Belknap and 3 Mile, Sly and Sinclair, as well as Conger. This creates a safety problem. That safety problem is with folks rolling stop signs, of driving fast through the neighborhood, and of not using their turn signals when they're entering or exiting the parking area or making turns through the neighborhood. I see it every day. My third concern, the design. As I mentioned, looking at what's been provided, the elevations, they look spec, commercial, very strip mall, in my opinion. The pitched roof is almost beside the point. It's just the rest of the building materials don't align themselves with, I think, is a beautiful example of mid-century Grand Rapids elementary school architecture that you can find all over the northeast side. And my last concern here with 30 seconds is the long-term use of the building. Right now they have, I understand, 400 and some odd students. They're adding capacity for potentially another 150 with 6 classrooms. Is there a way to require them to cap the enrollment at the size that they have so that 3 or 4 years from now, we're not dealing with even more parents in the neighborhood dropping off 1 or 2 kids with single occupancy vehicles? So what I would ask the commission to do, if I may finish, I have 3 points I'd like to make. I'd like you to
Sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off there.
Okay.
We're pretty strict on our 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, can I hand these remarks to you all?
If you want to, that's fine. Just hand them there to Commissioner Lund.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, for your reference.
Anyone else for this public hearing?
Good afternoon. My name is John Van Tolen. My wife and I have lived in the area on Monique Drive for the last 26 years. We walk past North Point Christian School probably at least once a day, sometimes twice. And, the school has been a great neighbor, maintaining and investing in their property and allowing the neighborhood to use the playground facilities, which we've enjoyed with our grandkids over the years. If past experience is any indicator, they'll continue to be an asset to the neighborhood. I believe we should value the school as part of the community. I think we need to be thankful that they're here, as that property would be primed for development if they were not. The purpose of the expansion is to improve the quality of education by reducing class size and overcrowding, and to provide additional and improved resources such as music and art to students, many of whom live in our neighborhood. Improving the educational experience is a great thing for us to provide for our children and our grandchildren. History shows that when Riverside Elementary was converted to Vista Springs Senior Living a few years ago, there were many of the same concerns voiced by the neighborhood. Design, style, noise, traffic, and other valid concerns were brought up. But since then, they have been blended beautifully into the community and have become much more of an asset than the high-density housing that could have been built there. One of the concerns expressed is traffic volume and speed on neighborhood roads, which occurs for a period in the morning and afternoon and during school events, but not generally during the day, most evenings, weekends, holidays, or during the summer. Having twice lived across or down the street from schools, I'm aware of the speeding and parking issues that can result from the drop-off and pickup process, but this really isn't a North Point problem. It's out there, but an enforcement responsibility of the GRPD. Perhaps a couple of $200 speeding in a school zone tickets may get the word out that the neighborhood is not to be a convenient speedway. Another expressed concern is wear and tear in the local streets. I recently retired from the transportation field for the last 45 years, and I'm very familiar with wear and tear of streets that vehicles can cause. However, these are, the vehicles that are dropping off kids in the morning and picking up in the afternoon are not commercial vehicles, but passenger cars, and the local roads should be designed to accommodate these vehicles. I believe if the roadway were properly replaced and maintained instead of continually patched, wear and tear on the roads would be reduced or eliminated. Again, not a North Point problem, but a responsibility of the city of Grand Rapids. I and many neighbors support this project, and I ask for your approval. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on this case?
Who should I leave these comments with for the record?
Why don't you can hand them to Commissioner Williams, that's fine.
Good afternoon. I'm Craig Van Weeren. I have kids enrolled at North Point Christian, and we live in the neighborhood. We live on College in the 2500 block, which is just a street, or on Union, sorry, which is just one street over from College, which butts up to the school on the north side, or the east side. Our kids have been going there since 2010, and over the years what we've seen is that the classrooms got more congested, and in order to make more room, we lost an art room. And then a few years later, we lost a music room. And so our kids were having a teacher with a cart coming to school, to their classroom to do music or to do art. And so they kind of lost out on the classroom space. And what's great is with this proposal, this is what they're going to gain again. They're going to get a room where they can just have art, where they can just have music. And so for us, we're excited about it. We were excited in 2018, and now we've got one left in the elementary school, which we walk to, and we just love the school in the neighborhood. Our kids are always over there after hours playing basketball, the sliding hill, of course, just the green space with soccer. And so for our kids, we're invested in the school. We made that choice when we moved into the neighborhood in 2004. And so we're just excited for this to happen, so we hope that you guys approve it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will close the public hearing. Invite the applicant back up if there's anything you want to address that was raised in the public hearing, and also see if commissioners have any other questions.
Sure. One thing I will address about one of the special events that has caused problems with traffic in the past with parents or people parking all over is Grandparents' Day. And just this year, they implemented a rotation. I don't know if they do it by grade or so instead of one day with all 5 classes having grandparents there, no place to park. They now do grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, however, they split it up. It's actually more of a burden on our staff, 5 days worth of grandparents coming in, donuts, coffee. But Karen is our principal, Heidi's our assistant principal. Very happy to talk to anybody. I don't know if you have questions for them, but that was the one thing I wanted to address.
All right, thanks. Commissioners, any questions? All right, then discussion on the proposed use expansion plans.
I'm sorry, could we just confirm that they're not adding to their student enrollment, or that's not their intent?
Yes, that's, I think we can confirm that. That's not the intent of the project.
Okay.
I can't tell you that a few more won't come.
Yeah, I
Because every
understand.
year we have enrollment. And, but yeah, that's not the impetus of this project. It's to serve our existing community.
Okay.
As, like you heard from the parent there.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
I lived in this neighborhood for a long time. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And well, my children didn't go to this school. Almost any elementary school I happen by in the city and others has those times when there's a lot of parking on the street due to the elementary school. I think, though, that the asset of having a school in a neighborhood outweighs those times when you might have some congestion around the school, and is something that neighbors typically get used to and then appreciate the asset that they have there. So I am not as bothered by the traffic problems. I think they're outweighed by what this does for the neighborhood and for the children already in the school. And you're not increasing the school's population, you're enhancing the school for the things that they ought to have.
Any other thoughts?
I don't know if I'm able to ask this, but I'm curious as just to the demographics for like the current students.
I don't think it would be appropriate to ask that.
Okay.
Thanks for framing it that way, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you have anything, Kristen?
Just encouraging the Planning Commission to have a robust conversation for the record to build before a motion is made.
Yeah, I'll articulate my support for this. You know, while I want to be clear, we are not limiting, you know, I appreciate the applicants stating their intention of not growing with this particular improvement without trying to grow their population of students. We aren't, should we approve this request, we can't put a restriction on the applicant to do what they do, which is to try to add students to their population. So I'm supportive of it. I'm also supportive of being clear that we're not trying to limit the applicant's use of this particular building. I think as you look at the use, the expansion of the buildings, there's still plenty of green space. You're adding parking, whether there's 3 or 4 spaces that are deemed, sort of unnecessary by the applicant. I think this is a good use. I think to one of the comments from the public meeting, perhaps there's an enforcement concern if there's speeding or there's, people aren't adhering to traffic regulation, that we could make sure that GRPD or the city is aware of an enforcement issue. But I don't see how this addition is going to make that worse, or that there's anything more that the applicant could do to lessen that. So I'm in support of the request.
I would also add, as someone who lived across from a middle school for 5 years, I understand all too well the frustrations of the drop-off and pickup areas and sometimes getting blocked into my own house during these, but I would agree that, the benefits of having a school in the neighborhood vastly outweigh the inconveniences that sometimes occur. I would encourage the applicants, when you have all these houses around there, the more students who are local who can walk and bike, the ones who maybe don't live in the neighborhoods, if you could help coordinate carpools to reduce that traffic flow, any sort of proactive measures, that the applicant can take to deal with some of these potential traffic concerns, I think would evolve what it means to continue to be a good neighbor in the long run, as you maybe even accidentally continue to grow. Who knows? But I agree. I think this project, has my support. I believe you've addressed a lot of the concerns.
Yeah, I'd say I'm, in terms of going to the steep slope encroachment, I think that the benefit of, the safety benefit of removing that wall versus kind of the encroaching a little further into the steep slope is worth it. So I'm in support of that change from 2018. And I also agree that this particular addition is not going to exacerbate the traffic problem, but that, and I'm encouraged that the applicant is willing to work with the community and has implemented some kind of operational things, but would also encourage the community to reach out to 311 or whoever if there are issues, and if a study is warranted, that maybe that's one avenue to get that done, to see if some traffic calming would be necessary.
I'll make a motion. Now therefore it be resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use request of North Point Christian Schools, Todd Tulsma, to construct a 7,600 square foot addition to an existing elementary school and expand an existing parking lot in an area with steep slopes at 540 Russwood Street Northeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will contribute to the viability of a neighborhood school, which is a great neighborhood's objective of the master plan. The proposed use would be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the existing and planned character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and natural environment, because the proposed use is an expansion of an existing use in the neighborhood, and because the proposed use will complement and provide support for residential uses already in the neighborhood. Potentially adverse effects rising from the proposed use on the neighborhood and adjacent properties would be minimized through the provision of adequate parking, the placement of building structures and entrances, as well as the location of screening, fencing, and buffering. Because building structures and entrances are appropriately oriented on the site layout is arranged so as to allow vehicle circulation for student drop-off and pickup without negatively affecting traffic on surrounding streets, and the parking needs of the use will not be significantly affected by the proposed addition. The proposed use would not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to the existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic noise, smoke, odors, glare, visual clutter, electrical or electromagnetic interference, because the traffic generated by the use will be limited to the specific pickup and drop-off times and other incidental uses, and no expansion of outdoor uses is otherwise proposed. The proposed use would not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment, because pedestrian access to the site is not proposed to change. The building and site area required for the proposed use will retain as many natural features of the landscape as practicable, particularly where the natural features assist in preserving the general character of the neighborhood, because the proposed addition will require the grading of steep slopes on site, but at a limited scale, which can be permitted. And adequate public or private infrastructure and services already exist or will be provided at no additional cost and will safeguard the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, because the site has already been improved with infrastructure and additional infrastructure is not needed for the proposed expansion. And proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city, because the proposed use is not expected to result in a need for additional city services. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A, which is displayed and has already been read. That is all.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any final discussion? Yes. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Open up the public comment portion of the meeting. If you're here today and want to share anything with us, you can come forward. Close public comment. Any other business? All right, then we are adjourned. See you in February.
Back here, or hopefully here?
I think we are here for the first meeting in February and the second meeting in February. Stay tuned.